So I'm Paul McLaughlin. I'm a manager of solution architecture at Blue Cross, North Carolina. And I want to tell you a little bit of an open source program office journey. And Paula, I'm glad to see you here because I was in your talk earlier and you were describing a journey that we are partially along. And by way of caveat, I want to say I'm not going to give you like the gold star, hey, I've done the whole path and you can follow me. What I'm going to describe here a little bit is this is a journey that we're on so far. Here's some things we've learned. Here's something to really apply in a mid-sized corporate environment. If all your life is going to be in like a startup environment, then and you never think you need to influence anybody with a corporate set of challenges, then okay, you might not be so interested. But I'm hoping that somewhere in here there's something for everybody as you're trying to follow this journey along the way now or in the near future or anything. Our solution architecture department, by the way, we really have a good time. It's a good group of really technical people that are, we're centralized under the CTO, but we're distributed across the whole enterprise to do lots of different things. It's a really juicy set of problems that we get to work on. Let me kind of take a little temperature of the room here. I've seen a couple people ask this before. How many of you are in some kind of enterprise world already, in a business somewhere? Okay. Are you building stuff for other people to use, or are you consuming it more? How many consumers? How many builders? How many both? Okay, that's good. Anybody at the point where you're saying, oh, we've really gone too far, we need to pull back and do less open source? Okay, good enough. Maybe. When Paula, when you were talking, you spoke about different sweet spots for the corporation, for your enterprise. Are you more on the contribution side or more on the consumption side, or maybe a little bit of both? I would say in our case, we're more on the consumption side, and we're really not giving any serious thought to contribution at this point. But the way I view the open source program office at Blue Cross is we're laying the groundwork for trying to get it right. Wherever we go next, we will need to have some intentionality about it and not just do it accidentally. There we go. So just a little bit about Blue Cross then. I told you about my department. We think we get to have a lot of fun with what we do. At Blue Cross in general, we're a mid-sized corporation, about 8,000 people, I think. Oh, somebody's going to correct me on that back home. But we're really excited about our mission. And for us here in North Carolina, we're local. We feel like if we let down on the job, we're letting down literally our next door neighbors. Okay, so it gets really personal for us. We have this rally cry of we won't stop until healthcare is better for all. So we're looking for ways to address problems in kind of creative ways, I think. And I can get started on that another day, but it's a lot of it is tackling the underlying causes and underlying drivers that are shooting the cost up. So can we correct some of those problems creatively and help out our neighbors? On the IT side, we pulled in we thought it was a pretty prestigious award in 2022, the Enterprise Architecture Award from Forrester. And that knocked our socks off. We had no idea that we would get in the top 3, let alone take top honors in Austin last year. We were up against a lot of big name corporations. The thing that got Forrester's attention was the idea of us, how we're tying what we're doing in architecture and IT to delivering value for real customers. So as you listen to me here today, part of the subtext is when we do open source program office, we're trying to think of ways to bring value to the people we really serve in the end. It's not open source for the sake of open source or architecture for the sake of architecture. It's for the guy next door, okay? We think we get a good place to work. We really love our job. The byword is that we're a lot of us, we've gotten into the department that everybody wants to get into. We've got into a company that people really enjoy. So enough bragging on Blue Cross. You can talk to me about that later if you want. But we do have some issues. These might be issues that you might find in a lot of corporations, so I'm not going to single us out. Institutionally, we're risk adverse, and there's good reason for that. Individually, people are risk naive, and there's whatever reason that is. So a little description of these things, okay? We're a regulated industry, and if we brought in something bad and it led to a data breach, that would be hellish. We're not, we just don't want to do that. Customer perception is a big deal. System stability is a big deal. Even if it's not a data breach, if I brought in this we literally had this story a few years ago. If I bring in this open source 64-bit solution to a middleware problem that we had, would that make my system less stable? And would I have complaints coming in? They have no idea that it's because I brought in this middleware thing. Would I have people calling in and dissatisfied with the service and unable to accomplish the things that they're coming to us for? So we're generally tech forward, but it's cautiously tech forward. There's a perception that it needs to be safe, so anything that we bring into the enterprise needs to be supported. The idea that we would bring in an open source thing and it'll just work is really not going to fly. The idea that we'll just support it ourselves might work for you architects, but we're not going to. The architects aren't going to sell that very far. Okay, and really, the architects don't want to be in the business of supporting this for years to come. There's on the naivety side. There's a lack of awareness about what you're putting in your own laptop. And it's no surprise. A lot of people say, hey, it looks good, it's got lots of stars, it must be good, and it probably is. But they're not doing some diligence there. And every so often we get surprised. And we did get surprised as we went through this last couple of years. We found a couple commonly used plugins that were actually malware vectors, and we had to correct that right away, and that was a good thing that we were pushing on that. We found a couple of truly odd obstacles along the way. Some of them were really good obstacles. Some of them were really strange obstacles. In some cases, we had some good ideas that were just dead on arrival, and they shouldn't have been, and we wanted to get going to fix that. See, I mentioned Blue Cross is about 8,000 people. Of that group, about 1,000 of us are in IT in some form. So just kind of give you a sense of what kind of scale we're looking at here. Let's see. So I knew from going to All Things Open that there was a thing called an open source program office. And it might be an interesting idea for us to get into, because in my shop, I kept running into random pain points where it's like the right way to do it really should include this as an option, but we're excluding that arbitrarily, it seems. So we would exclude open source solutions arbitrarily, or we would approach it and spin on it and not get very far. So I wanted to see an OSPO get started at Blue Cross that could provide like a nucleation point, advise, educate, remove the roadblocks. You can see these kinds of things. Maybe one day move into the possibility of contributing. But recognize if we ever got into a contribution side, it would go back to that battle cry. We won't stop until we make healthcare better for all. So somewhere in there, if it was going to be an open source contribution project, it'd be the kind of thing where we are laying a foundation that is going to help our customers ultimately. We're we're still mulling over what form that ought to take. So here I am looking at this and I'm saying, gee, I wish some of these problems would go away. Who can make them go away? And I kind of quizzed a few of my colleagues in different areas. I'm in architecture, talked to people in contracting, and I found some people that are very enthusiastic about, yeah, we ought to fix this, people in security, so on and so on. And it was one of those, everybody kind of, say, well, I'm not sure I'm the right person to do it. Ultimately, I decided that architecture was probably the best position to at least start pulling the group together. Call it whatever name it is in your group, an organization, it would be the architecture group. We were the people that were supposed to be figuring out some of the next things, some of the strategic direction. And this really wasn't part of our strategic challenge at the point. But it kind of fit into our corral, more or less. And I'd also been to a few of these sessions where I understood some of the ins and outs of what open source could involve for us. So I was probably like one step ahead of some other guys, and that made me the main nominee. We got going pretty quick. So a little thing about mid-sized corporation. I've seen a lot of dead bodies along the side of the road from people that tried to do something really ambitious and could not get it off the ground. And I didn't want to be another one of those dead bodies. So I wanted to do some careful groundwork laying. We weren't in a hurry just yet. So I had some time to go do some research. I just Googled stuff. What does an OSPO do? Got a little crash course. I collected a group of people around me who could form the core. And we informally all agreed that, yeah, this is what this might ought to look like. And then, Paula, you mentioned this on your slide too, we found a sponsor because I wanted to have some kind of high-level name attached to this, somebody that's saying, yeah, this is worth paying attention to. So I got, actually got two sponsors, a director from Enterprise Architecture, who is my boss. At the time, she was my second level. And we got the director of category management, and category management to us means vendor contracting, essentially. So that's the essentially the architecture and the contracting side of this wheel here. So they're both tuned in on this, and they became the people that could guide us. They became our steering committee, help us to navigate realistic expectations, setting some priorities, managing resistance in the organization that a little bit cropped up, but not a heck of a lot. A lot of people basically saw the willing reasons to get into this. And I already covered this slide. So we needed to involve several functions. Just to kind of recap a few of those. Things that people haven't mentioned yet are software asset management. In our world, we have the laptops are managed. You're not just on your own with what you can and can't install on your laptop, unless you have local admin rights, in which case you can get away with a lot of things, not 100% yet. But we need to get them tuned in because we knew that if we were going to tackle some of the vulnerabilities on the laptop level, never mind adopting open source, this is just using it properly. We needed them to be part of the equation to evaluate things correctly and then to help the other people get things right. They were going to be the main center point for succeeding on a lot of this. The developers and the development pipeline needed to be included. There is a real question about if you find this great open source code package online and it's a way to accelerate delivering value to our customers, should you use it? And the answer is maybe. Let's give you a framework to use to play it through. Production support, the reality check for the architects was that you couldn't just throw something over the wall into production. And we knew that, but we really had to get serious about laying careful production support groundwork before we did, especially if it's ambitious, before we pulled in an ambitious new thing. In our world, this is covering a lot of territory. But to these people's credit, we approached them, we explained why it would matter, and it made it easy for them to get on board and help out a little bit. We did a few different passes. If this was agile, it would be 2-week sprints, except these were months and months long. And what we're doing is we're looking for ways to tackle the most important things first. Very quickly, we needed to get out there with some baseline education. There were a lot of myths out there that we needed to help people get disabused of. And then there was several processes to realign, things that just didn't know how to handle, didn't know how to grapple with an open source reality. I'm going to mention this a lot. In our world, communicating and over-communicating was a huge difference maker. It really helped people know where we were, where we're going next, why things matter. Let's see, so just a little preview of some of the education we did. Took it to an IT all-hands meeting because I wanted to catch all those guys with local admin rights. Nobody had heard of a copyleft. And so we told them a story about it. You know, here you are, you're on a development team, you found this great package, you pull it in, you don't even look at the license, and lo and behold, it involves a copyleft, which, as we heard at one of the keynotes this morning, is if it's strong copyleft, I've got to tell you the whole proprietary formula for my Oreo cream. And we did not want to put some of our in-house code out in the world for other people to inspect. Or you know, I don't care if they build on it, I just don't want them to know how some of the things are done on the inside, if I can help it. And that's all about protecting our customers' data and things like that, and making sure we don't have, making sure that the processes all run with great integrity. So there's that kind of a story. And to be honest, I am sure I heard somebody say that this was a near miss in my shop. I couldn't find anybody to prove it later. But I'm sure it's probably an urban legend at this point. I'm sure it's happened to a friend of mine, but I can't name the guy at the moment. The other one was there was another corporation. We were using their Java material, Java JDK. And they said, you know what, we changed the license terms now. Used to be free, now it's going to cost you some money. And look, you guys have a lot of licenses. We think you should pay us a lot of money. And we said, yeah, but we need that money for something else. So we actually had a real effort to go out there and try to find this and say, take this off, put this other thing on. To my chagrin, we found out just a couple months ago that the standard image that we're sending out with new laptops still includes the wrong one. So we just had a sequel to that little story. So there were a couple stories there just to help people realize some of the basics. I'm not telling you guys anything special new. We had some blind spots. Somehow or another, plugins didn't count as software. Software that could be a malware vector. So people need to think up about that. Somehow people also equated with free with it's okay to use, when in fact free might not be okay to use. There might be some strings attached. And we went through in the early education, we cleared up a few myths. Now I think y'all will probably get 100% on this, right? Can you look at this and make your guesses on which one's truth and which one's myth? Open source and free software are the same thing. I just told you the answer on that one. If it's free, it must be legal. If it's from a reputable site and I check the license, then it's probably safe. If we have a license and contract with System X, like say Salesforce, then we can use everything on their marketplace. If I test it and I can incorporate it into open source without production, I can incorporate my open source into the production solution. And if I buy the license myself, it's okay for me to put it on the corporate machine. And answers are open source, free are not the same thing. Free, legal, yeah. If it's from a reputable site and I check the license, it's probably safe. Can't tell yet. In my opinion, a layman is 90% going to get this right. And depends on how far you're going with it. If you're just doing like a quick evaluation to see if it's worth looking into further, okay, go. If you are going to make this something that the whole enterprise is committing to, would you please get a legal review of that license? Because every so often I get surprised at what the expert sees that I miss. And so on and so on. And the rest of these are myths. The seventh myth was, it's just better off to avoid open source altogether because it's dangerous. And that was a huge myth, and we explained why that just, wasn't a good place to go. The message that we wanted to leave people with was, do be a savvy user, just don't be careless. And we gave them several points to follow. One of the big ones that I really needed a lot of people to catch was, don't freak out. I didn't want my production managers to just back off and say, no, it's copy left, scary. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted the people that had the developer laptops to be careful, and then do use it. Do keep using it. Let me pause here. I've given you a lot. Any questions so far? Observations?
What's an example of software that you use?
Boy, it's a wide field.
Well, not you, but like anyone in the organization. So like someone who's like not technical, are they using open source software like as an application or only as libraries? Or?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so a lot of people are picking up open source desktop software. We use draw.io, for example, for a lot of our diagramming. That's kind of a long-term arc, by the way. I love Visio. It's not that expensive for us. I can pay just a few bucks a year for a seat. But Draw.io tags into something else. A lot of plugins, and I'm not sure I can name all the developer plugins off the top of my head at this point. Is that the kind of question you're asking?
Yeah, it's one of the general shape of it.
Yeah. Very good. Anything else?
So is any of your actual infrastructure running on or based on open source? Like you baseline MySQL, for example, instead of Oracle database or things of that nature. Okay.
We have some open source in infrastructure database environments. Yeah. Very good. Let's see, a little bit about so I told you about the education, a little bit about the process realignment. I mentioned some really odd experiences we had. Early on, we wanted to bring in an open source solution, and the vendor manager people said, well, we'll just send a purchase order to the vendor because that's what we know how to do. And there was a little bit of a little bit of help had to give them there. The security guys had a real interesting set of problems. The way they would evaluate any software to bring in, part of the evaluation would include a viability assessment of the company. That counts for a couple reasons. One is, if they're just going to close up shop in a couple years, that may not be good for our business anyway, because they're going to leave us without support. The other one is, if it's just a couple guys working in the garage, how careful are they about malware? So they need to know how realistic this company is. And in the case of every single open source package, they couldn't find a corporation with a reputation that was delivering the software. Now, something like Red Hat would be a different story, because now they're packaging it, bottling the water for you and all that. But these other things, not so much. So we had to have a conversation together, and it was a willing conversation, by the way. They wanted to find a way to go forward, because they say, we think it's the right thing to do, but how do we get there? And we really ultimately had to reframe the question. What you're looking for is a way to prove that the thing is long-lived and viable. Can you find a different yardstick? Like, can you look at the strength of the support community and how long and how active their history is for delivering releases? And they said, yeah, that would work pretty well. So they came along that way. Already mentioned the idea of don't tossing things into production. The delivery pipeline guys were ahead of us on the last bullet here. They had a service that they pulled together that would examine all of the source code packages that we were including. And I highly recommend this, by the way. And it would check for a few different things. And it would check for them on a rules-based basis that we picked. So we're careful about these kinds of licenses, warn me about these kinds of things. And hey, if that version has the security vulnerability that's been flagged, then would you please put the brakes on? So, yeah.
When you refer to the enterprise security risk assessment, measuring the company viability, is that a security team that's more like a traditional IT security team, or what is it?
Yeah, no, it's definitely an IT security team, as opposed to like the physical security of the site.
Was it like a compliance kind of team, or somebody that was specifically looking in more narrow?
Yeah. Their shop actually covers lots of different responsibilities, and they are very good at also paying attention to threat assessment and keeping us honest. I get my monthly or bi-monthly phishing attack. That's white hat phishing. So.
What software product do you use for your scanning, like FASA, Black Duck, something like that?
I'd have to get back to you on that. He mentioned the name 2 years ago, and I do not remember it now. But yeah, you can get together with me later if you want. Okay. The how, no big surprise. We found champions in each area. We did a lot of two-way listening. Did small incremental adjustments. There's a sense of developing a shared ownership in here. And I want to hammer home over-communicate. We're turning I don't know if we were turning a battleship in this case, but we were turning something that needed to move carefully. So that was important for us to keep people together. Let's see, so some things that we already had going for us and that we developed along the way. Our culture really generally wants to collaborate. I get surprised at this. This is one of those who-us moments that I mention every so often. We'll have people come in as new hires, and they say, "Yeah, you guys actually do this." They're surprised that people will stop, give them time to help them think through problems, and that's all kinds of areas. Nobody's an expert at everything, and we lean on each other a lot. We generally want to do what's right for our customers. So that comes through, and that makes a really good, fertile environment for trying out some things, but carefully. We developed that shared understanding, shared ownership of what we need to do. A lot more invitation than dictation was involved here. It was really helpful to get people on board instead of push people that may be resistant. And last bullet is over communicate. So I mentioned we've we've done this like in like mega sprints, and I'm abusing that word, I realize. Where we are going next, and to pick on Paula's arc from earlier, we need to redo some education, do some refreshers. We still need to find a way of getting some recurring reviews on individual laptops. There's a lot of attention that's paid at the initial delivery, and there's the assumption that things are probably working right. We want to prove that for ourselves, though. And then keep monitoring. There's security and I have had a conversation about refining the way we assess risk a little bit further even. At some point, there is, we're all about the risk of bringing in this unknown thing. At some point, there is also the risk of leaving a situation the way it is. So if we have a problem already, and we know it's going to have this much risk, am I basically improving my risk state if I bring in an open source solution? That's kind of not the place that we've been willing to go yet. If it's like that middleware adapter that I alluded to earlier, we'll be having a production pipeline rely on this open source thing that does not have a paid subscription model behind it. Is there a way to characterize that and say we've got enough support here to where it's credible? And if anything does go bump in the night, it will recover fast enough, that kind of thing. So we're not there yet. I don't want to promise that we would get there. That would be foolish. But those are some of the conversations that are going on next.